Welcome to this visual explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive historical detective story. We're heading back in time to explore the ancient Qumran community. If you've ever been totally captivated by the idea of secret societies, hidden texts, and just radical lifestyles, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's break down the rich history and the sheer mystery surrounding these enigmatic people.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just picture the scene for a second. You've got this young shepherd, Muhammad Dabib, out searching for a lost goat among these harsh, craggy rocks right near the Dead Sea. He tosses a stone into this dark cave opening, and instead of a bleeding goat, he hears the unmistakable sound of breaking pottery. What he stumbled upon inside those ancient jars turned out to be the very first of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, this chance discovery literally blew the lid off one of the greatest archaeological enigmas in human history.
But, this incredible discovery immediately begs a massive question, and it's one I really want you to think about right now. Who were the people who completely walked away from civilization, who abandoned the known world to painstakingly write and then hide these scrolls out in the middle of a barren desert? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at a group of people known as the Essenes.
Part 1. Ancient Witnesses Speak. To piece together this giant puzzle, we can't just look at the physical ruins of Qumran. We're actually going to call to the stand two ancient historical reporters from the 1st century who documented this bizarre, isolated lifestyle, the Roman author Pliny the Elder and the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. Let's see what they actually had to say.
So Pliny the Elder was just utterly fascinated by them. He wrote that they lived without women, they completely avoided money, and lived out among the palm trees. But here is the wildest part. He marvels at how they survived for ages without a single person actually being born into their community. Like, how does that even work? Well, because they were constantly replenished by a steady stream of new recruits. Basically, people who were completely exhausted by the turbulent sea of life and just needed to seek refuge out in the desert.
And then we have Flavius Josephus. He categorized the Jewish philosophies of his day into three main sects: the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes. And he noted that the Essenes really set themselves apart through this extreme mutual devotion, like a super deep affection for one another, and an incredibly rigid, extraordinary fear of God. These guys weren't just some casual religious group. They were deeply, radically committed to their brotherhood.
Part 2. The ascetic life. So, we know they were devoted, and we know they were isolated. But what did a normal Tuesday actually look like for an Essene? We're going to look a bit closer at the intense daily grind of this community to really grasp their isolated reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how intensely regimented their entire existence was. Every single day followed this strict, almost military-level precision. Step 1, they're up before the sun, right? Not uttering a single word about worldly matters, just reciting ancestral prayers as if they're physically urging the sun to rise. Step 2, intense labor. They worked at their assigned crafts or out in the fields until the 5th hour. Step 3, they gathered together, put on these white veils, and bathed in freezing cold water just to purify themselves. And finally, Step 4, completely purified, they'd walk into their dining hall in absolute pin-drop silence, treating the room like it was a literal holy temple, all to share a sacred communal meal. Talk about a life of ultimate discipline.
But here's the thing, you couldn't just knock on the door and join the club. I really want you to put yourself in their shoes and imagine enduring this completely grueling initiation process just to become an Essene. First off, you wait outside the community for a full year, and they give you nothing but a small axe and a white robe. If you somehow show enough self-control, okay, you're allowed to share their purifying waters, but get this, you still can't even eat with them. You have to endure 2 more years of intense character testing. Only then, if you're deemed worthy, do you swear this massive, life-altering oath to love truth, hate wickedness, never abuse power, completely avoid luxury, and above all, protect the community's secrets with your actual life. It took an unbelievable amount of willpower just to be accepted.
Let's see how all this discipline builds into this really incredible historical anecdote recorded by Josephus. See, the Essenes were highly respected for their prophetic gifts. Josephus actually tells this crazy story about an Essene named Menahem who spotted a young boy just walking to school. Menahem greets this kid as the future king of the Jews. Now, this boy had absolutely zero royal prospects at the time, but his name? Herod. When Herod the Great actually did become king years later, he totally remembered Menahem's prophecy. And because of that, King Herod held the Essenes in incredibly high regard, even exempting them from certain loyalties that were strictly required of everyone else. Part 3. The Maccabean Rebellion. Now this brings up a massive, glaring question.
These people were clearly respected, right? Even by kings. So why flee? Why put yourself through that brutal initiation and live out in the unforgiving desert? Well, to answer that, we've got to zoom out from the micro view of their peaceful existence and look at the macro view of the absolute political chaos going on around them.
So the really crucial point to grasp here is the sheer overwhelming violence of the era. If we trace the timeline back to the Seleucid rule, the Jewish people were heavily oppressed and violently forced to worship idols. The breaking point? It happened in a small town called Modian. A priest named Matthedius watched a Jewish man step up to an altar to offer an idol sacrifice. And Matthedius just snapped. He assassinated both the compromising man and the king's official right there on the altar. He and his sons then immediately fled into the mountains, which sparked the incredibly bloody Maccabean revolt that completely engulfed Judea in warfare from roughly 165 to 135 BC.
Part 4. Escaping the turmoil. The whole region was just totally torn apart. Political assassinations, religious compromise, brutal warfare, this all just became the new normal. And this chaos didn't stop with the Maccabees, it kept right on rolling through to the eventual Roman intervention. It really created a perfect, terrifying storm. For a group of people completely obsessed with absolute purity and strict adherence to the law, mainstream society had essentially become fundamentally broken. It was too corrupted to save. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark, honestly powerful contrast that defined their entire existence. On one side, you have the world outside, a landscape just scarred by warfare, political assassinations, forced cultural assimilation, absolute chaos. And then, on the other side, you have the world they built inside Qumran. Absolute silence, intense daily purity rituals, strict asceticism, and this quiet, highly structured wait for the end of times. They didn't just move away into the desert. They literally created an anti-world.
When we look at these ancient writings today, we really aren't just looking at dusty old religious texts. We're looking at the survival manual of a community that intentionally walked away from a burning house. Understanding the violent, turbulent history of Judea during those Maccabean and Roman eras perfectly explains the radical aesthetic choices that the Essenes recorded in these very scrolls. They actively chose the harsh hardship of the desert over the deep corruption of the city.
Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Looking back at their grueling lifestyle and the deeply chaotic world they fled, was abandoning a broken society for radical isolation an act of cowardice? Was it just a refusal to stay and fix the world? Or was it the ultimate act of devotion, preserving the pure light of their faith out in the darkness of the desert? I'll leave that one for you to decide. Thank you so much for joining me in uncovering the mysteries of Qumran. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you in the next Visual Explainer.